Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Pete from KWL Wealth Management, and thank you for taking the time to join us for what I generally think is a really important session. Now, today is slightly different to what we'd normally do. This isn't about investments, markets, or performance. This is about something far more personal and in many ways far more important. Now, I first came across Matthew's work completely by chance. I was on holiday and I picked up his book, Your Last Gift. And if I'm honest, it stopped me in my tracks a little bit. In fact, I was looking back through those photos a while ago and I found the exact moment. It was on the 8th of July, 2024 at 8 minutes past 1 in the afternoon. And I was laid out on a sunbed in Salgalga in Minorca with Matthew's book in front of me. And I'm going to flash up a photo once we've edited this anyway of my legs on a sun lounger reading the book. Now, I can just remember sitting there thinking, this is really different to what I've read before. And I need to get this out there for people to benefit, because this isn't just about paperwork or legal documents. This is about making life easier for the people you care about most. And actually sitting on that sunbed, 24 months ago now, that's where the idea of this recording came from. And the idea of having a proper conversation with Matthew, bringing the book to life and sharing it with our friends. So since 2024, we've shared it quite widely. We've gifted copies to a number of our clients, as well as friends and family, and particularly those at a stage where those conversations become more relevant. And the feedback has been incredibly powerful. And what it really highlighted to me was that even the most organised people, even those who have done financially well, often haven't joined up all the dots when it comes to things like powers of attorney, wills, funeral wishes, and the practical side of what actually happens when something goes wrong. And more importantly, how simple it can be to put things in place now that make a huge difference later. So now I'm really pleased to introduce Matthew properly. Matthew Hutton is Norfolk born and bred and still very much rooted there today, managing his family farm, which has been responsible for since his father's death back in 1984. Academically, he studied classics at Oxford before qualifying as a solicitor in 1979. He then spent over 3 decades working in the legal and tax world, specialising in estate planning and trusts, before going on to run his own consultancy, advising, lecturing and writing extensively in this area. But what makes Matthew quite unique is that alongside that professional background, he was ordained in 2014 as a minister in the Church of England. So what you get is a rare combination. Someone who understands not just the technical and legal side of putting your affairs in order, but also the very real human emotional side of what families go through when someone dies. And in 2020, he was appointed a Deputy Lieutenant of Norfolk. And outside of all of that, he and his wife Annie have 3 children and 2 grandchildren. Now, the idea of Your Last Gift didn't come from theory, I don't believe. It came from real life, from conversations with friends, and from seeing firsthand that while there are plenty of books about grief and bereavement, there was very little that actually helped people deal with all the practical stuff that suddenly lands on their lap. And that's really what this book is all about. A clear, structured step-by-step guide to getting your affairs in order, with practical checklists and tools that make things easier for the people you leave behind. So, Matthew, that's my introduction. Is there anything I've missed? I'm not too sure. I've covered off a lot there, but perhaps you could just share a little bit more about your background and what led you to write Your Last Gift.
Yeah, Pete, well, thank you so much. Very generous introduction. Thank you for your welcome. Thank you for your invitation. And we might, I don't think I want to add anything. We might get up the next slide, if we can, why I wrote the book. And it's really going back 6 years, 2020. Annie and I had 2 recently widowed friends to stay who in different ways had been left quite high and dry by their husbands. One was a solicitor, didn't have a will. The other one, whose husband was a dear friend of mine, our daughter Alexandra's godfather, had sadly suffered dementia. And it was his widow who said that if I were to write something, it would be a real gift to people who were left behind.
Okay.
hence the title, which I thought was a great idea. And I talked to various other people about it. I take time doing things, so it was a couple of years before it saw the light of day, but it sort of benefited from ongoing discussions with people. And I think you're right that there are masses of books about bereavement and grief and how to cope with that. But until you go through it with somebody close, nobody really understands all the stuff, if I can put it like that, that has to be done. And it can be very confusing. Can be very complex. It can be soul destroying. As I say on the slide, almost paralyzing. But as you said in the intro, it is so easy to get it right. I looked around. There's some stuff in America. There are one or two checklist type books that you
Yeah.
can do. But I felt what was missing in the marketplace was something relatively concise, relatively light.
Yeah.
hence,
Yeah.
the,
Yeah. Yeah. I found that. Yeah.
hence the cartoons.
Yeah. Yeah. I love them.
You'll see one at the bottom, quotations and so on. But equally serious. It's not the last word on the subject. I mean that would be impossible. But it gets people to think about it. And I think we'll come on to the structure of the book, but I think it is a gift to those you leave behind. And so that's really what it's about.
Good. Yeah. I'm, that's what, when I introduced the book to clients and, I've got plenty of copies here, but one's here. And it's very light. It's quite an enjoyable read, actually. It's a story through different sections, isn't it? And for me, that's always been the difficulty trying to get anybody to read any kind of financial, planning kind of, or this kind of last gift book, is that some of the legal content can be quite heavy and lose us almost immediately. And I didn't find that at all in this. It was really pitched very, very well. But like we've alluded to, there are lots of tools and hints and tips towards the back of the book as well. So although it's that, you don't have to read all of the book actually, because of the useful bits are right at the back, but you've got to really read the book to understand certain parts of the back. So yeah, fantastic, really, really good.
Yes.
And like I said, this is why.
And as you say, it really comes out of the combination of my professional and
Yeah.
pastoral background. And it all leads, the whole thrust of the book is towards these 2 checklists and 5 forms of information. That the text is there at the back. It's not to be filled in. You know those irritating forms where you've got a tiny box and you've got
Yeah,
to
I know. Yeah.
It's not for
buy the
people.
binder, the
I know.
A3 binder, whatever it is. Yeah, yeah.
But what it's doing is telling you what's on the website that you can then go into and customize
Okay.
and make your own. You can print out, you can do it in hard copy. You can actually buy a separate ring bound
Yeah.
book
That's what I've done. Yeah,
to
that's
do.
what I've done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there it is.
Good, good. So I think we're going to touch on a couple of important subjects today, aren't we? I think we're going to be talking about lasting powers of attorney, covering off wills, funeral arrangements, and there's quite a bit that we're going to cover off in regards to relationships as well, I believe.
Yeah.
So you happy to kind of move on to the next?
So let's start with the next slide.
Yeah.
I mean, I've put my 10 top tips because it's nice and alliterative.
Yeah.
But you referred to lasting powers of attorney, wills, funeral arrangements. And I used to think, until I did a lot of lecturing last year, and over the course of that, I became persuaded that actually there's one number one priority,
Oh, okay.
which trumps, if I can use that.
Oh, well, yeah.
No, let me say kicks into touch. Those other 3, and that's relationships.
Okay.
And
yeah.
it's so sad. I mean, whenever you open the newspaper, and particularly, I mean, I'm a Times reader, but Saturday Times, Sunday Times, the money pages, Daily Mail, Express, Telegraph, whatever it is you read, every week there is a story about the combination. Sadly, it's the combination of death, money or possessions, taxes, and suddenly what might have seemed to be perfectly good relationships on the ground, people are at each other's throats.
Mm-hmm.
And just just to give a dig at my old profession, the law, the only people who win are the solicitors.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
but, but breakdown in relationship is
yeah.
completely devastating. And so what I'm saying to everybody is you really have to think about your close family, your close friends. And, we all have a wide variety of friendships. It's rather like a sort of circle. As you go towards the end of the circle, they're less close. They're very close in the middle. But the people who are really important to you or matter, just ask yourself, are they as good as they possibly can be? Um, have I said something? Um, well, thinking produces words and actions. Have I done something that
Sure.
that has
Yeah,
upset somebody?
yeah.
And of course, the easiest and the most difficult words in the English language are "I'm sorry," because we're all very
Yeah,
proud and we don't
yeah,
like saying "I'm sorry."
yeah,
Um, and it's often quite fun saying "I'm sorry" when you haven't done anything wrong,
yeah.
because actually it serves to build bridges. And maybe somebody's done something to you or said something to you.
Mm, mm,
Why not come clean, maybe over a glass of
mm,
wine or whatever,
mm.
and say, "Look, I'm terribly sorry. What and it might have been years ago, really upset me." They might not have been aware.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Things
yeah,
might have festered.
yeah.
So and I would say this as a clergyman, but the power of forgiveness
Mm,
is
mm.
huge.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
nice to hear. Yeah, so that's a good reminder as well. I think a really good reminder.
yeah,
We sometimes forget about that in this busy day, and things can be left unsaid for far too long. And we've made decisions from years ago that still affect us today, isn't
yeah.
it? And
And
yeah,
it
yeah.
might and going back, it might be the tiniest of things,
Mm, mm.
and it just sort of become huge. So
Yeah, yeah,
recognize it, do something about it. And
yeah,
that really
yeah,
leads on to the next point, which is conversations.
yeah,
Because of course, part of this whole subject is, it's the one thing we don't talk about. We talk about sex, religion, and politics, far too much about politics.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but we don't talk about death. I think that's changing. I think that's changing.
Mm.
In fact, Theos, the Christian think tank, did some research 3 years ago, and they discovered that as many as 25% of us think about our own death once a week. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Geez, yeah,
but
yeah,
but
yeah,
but we don't
yeah.
say anything about it.
No,
Something
no,
something
yeah,
goes on inside. So we're aware of it,
yeah, yeah,
um, and so why not just sort of bring it into the open? So conversations. I've talked about attorneys, guardians, executors. We'll come on to those. But before you put anything in writing, and I'm quite good at putting things in writing, talk to people,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and and then the notifications post death, as one of the forms in the book touches on that. Who needs to be told, how, and in what order. Some people need to be told in person or over the telephone.
mhm.
Others, emails are okay, but get the order right.
Have you seen that change over time, Matthew, in regards to that, a list of who and how, and the only reason I'm saying that is I can remember, my mum having a phone directory book with people's birthdays and addresses and telephone numbers in, because we didn't have mobile phones that stored all our information on it. And now, that list of people, although they're still very important, I haven't got only by filling out your ring binder have I listed the
Yes,
important people. But do you know what
yes.
I mean? Have you found that list get shorter or actually get lost because we're no longer recording things in for our Christmas cards that we send or the birthday cards that we send from that traditional kind of paper-based book?
Yes, I mean, I suppose everything's moved online, hasn't it?
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, and I suppose it's just keeping it updated, and it is quite nice, even if there's somebody who's a sort of a vague friend or whatever. Um, it's quite nice to hear about it in person rather than read about it in the newspaper,
yeah,
which gives you a
yeah,
shock.
yeah, yeah.
So, and then you will take, you might belong to a club and then you resign, you
Mm.
take things off the list. But
Sure.
but just try and keep it up to date. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe once a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was thought provoking, that part, when I was filling out mine. I kind of felt bad about not including someone. I was thinking, oh, maybe I ought to ought to include.
Well, if it's an email, it does no harm, really.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Yeah.
and also, if people are told, it makes them feel special.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
That.
think
Yeah.
making people feel special is
y-
important.
Yeah. 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 Especially that moment in life as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So
Should we move on?
shall we move on? So we now deal with
Yeah.
the next three:
Yeah.
LPAs, wills, and funeral arrangements. I mean, it's a sad fact of life, isn't it? And all of us will know people. I'm going to see an old friend of my late mother's on Saturday morning. I spoke to her yesterday, but I've discovered that dementia has started,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you don't know how it's going to develop. We all hope we'll die at a
We
ripe
just
old
don't wake
age.
up one morning. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I've
Yeah.
got a
Yeah.
wonderful quotation from my late mother-in-law, Biddy
Yeah.
Leppard, who was a delight, who said, "I want to wake up dead," which I thought was
I
brilliant.
like that. I'm have to
Yeah, I know.
remember that.
Well, it's in the
Yeah.
book, but
Yeah.
it's so we have to recognise the possibility, and what used to be called enduring powers of attorney. And I know one of the questions that
Yeah.
have got is, when did enduring powers of attorney get replaced by lasting powers of attorney? The answer is 19 years ago, in 2007. Enduring powers of attorney only dealt with property and financial affairs, whereas LPAs, lasting powers of attorney, there are two. There's property and financial affairs, there's health and welfare. And once made, you have to register each, £92 each, with the Office of the Public Guardian. And then you pop them away. You hope they'll never be needed. But if they are needed, they are there. And the question is, of course, who do you appoint? It's rather like, who do you appoint as executors?
Yeah.
My wife and I have done them. We've appointed each other plus the three children. We've appointed them what's called jointly and severally, which I know sounds a bit of legalese. And what I say to people, I've said the dangers of a joint appointment. If you simply make a joint appointment of Tom, Dick, and Harry, and Harry himself becomes mentally incapable, then the whole thing is invalid and you have to go to the Court of Protection to get it unwound. So if you make it several or joint and several, any of Tom, Dick, and Harry can act, and obviously they'll talk to each other and decide who is going to act. The health and welfare one can only get triggered once you are unable to manage your own affairs. Property and financial affairs, you can trigger it with one or more of your attorneys while you're in full capacity. If you want help with investments, for example, you can do that. But
we've done that's for many of our clients. They do travel quite regularly, or they're out of the country for a long period of time, potentially to visit family in Australia or America. So property and finance one can also help for if they're outside of the country for a long period of time, especially if we look at what happened to COVID. People were stranded for 2-3 months in Australia and couldn't get back, and still needed certain affairs to be dealt with. So
actually, that's a very good illustration. The thing with them, and the trouble is, both of these and wills, I say, see a solicitor. Well, I would, wouldn't I? You can do them online. And with wills, obviously, you can go to a will writer. But the point I want to make about lasting powers of attorney is that they've got to be spot on. They've got to be absolutely correct in every detail. And even if you have a typo, for example, it might get thrown out. So it's very important to get absolutely right. Then the final bullet point, there is something called an advance decision, which is witnessed by one other person. It's also called a living will,
Yeah.
within the NHS. And then there's a more informal form called the respect form.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
those tend to deal particularly with um, when you're terminally ill, when the end is nigh, and you've got particular wishes. I mean, the big one, of course, is do not resuscitate. You know,
Sure.
you do
Yeah.
not want officiously to be
Yeah.
kept alive.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody's very worried about turning off machines and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and you may change those as time goes on. But again, it's terribly important. I talked about conversations. Have those conversations with your family so they know your wishes. The doctors know your wishes.
Yeah.
And
Do you mind if I interject there,
no,
Matthew, actually, because
no,
this is a
yeah,
real life scenario that I can talk about actually quite
mm,
passionately. So, uh, scenario, my mum did one of these actually with Marie Curie. They were doing some
mm,
free support. So they went out to see mum and sat down with her and went through a kind of template of questions just to get an understanding of who she is, what's important to her. So if there was ever a need for care later down the line, we've got some form of outline of what she would want to happen. But in terms of the dying request, geez, wow, what an eye opener. Because if I had that phone call to say mum's end of life, what's happening, Pete? I would have sent my mum to hospital. It would have been just me and my sister there in a quiet room with probably just some beeps of a machine monitoring her breathing and her heart rate. And then when she passed, that would have been it. My mum's request actually was she'd want to die at home.
yep,
If possible,
yep,
not really into hospital. So straight away, I've sent her to the wrong place. Then it goes into the detail of who's there. Well, my mum's older, of the eldest of three sisters, and she's in there said as many people that want to be there, including my sisters. Well, I wouldn't have even thought. I would have rang them after the event. So now there's more people in that my mum would have wished to have been in that room potentially if they were able to get there. And then there was music. Geez, well, we were sat in a quiet room if it was my scenario. So my mum said it was Elvis Presley. So Blue Suede Shoes could have been playing or Ground or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And I figured, geez, what an awful send-off I would have given my mum compared to actually what she would have wanted without her writing it down. And actually, me and my sister's bigger and uglier than I am. And therefore, I'm sure that there would have been some friction between her and I about what mum's wishes were. So by mum writing it down and having that
yes,
conversation, either it wasn't with us, it was with a third party. Wow, honestly, that for me is so powerful, so powerful.
yeah. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
Very moving.
good,
So if
good.
that's it, I think we can move on to the
Yeah,
next.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, well, just very,
Oh,
very
any
briefly
more
on the powers.
questions?
And again, apologies because I didn't put this on the list. So if you don't want to answer it, don't feel you have to. But just as we're talking about, I'm thinking about clients that we've been working with, conversations we've had, and I don't know if you've got any thoughts around. If you don't want to answer it now, maybe at the end or not at all. But that's around where people haven't got family. So if they haven't got daughters, sons, brothers are the same age as themselves or older. I understand that solicitors are potentially able to kind of step in, but have you got any experience
I mean,
around that, Matthew?
yeah, I think you've got to make them.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Good
and
point.
and
Yeah.
and don't wait. I'm 72. Don't wait till you're 72. Make them in your 30s, for
Yeah.
example, because
Yeah.
tragically things can happen to anybody at any age. And just, you will have close friends, I
Sure.
guess.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
you could appoint a solicitor if you have, or you could appoint a financial advisor. I mean, it's somebody that you're close to, somebody that knows you.
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
most important is somebody that you trust,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
if you don't make them, then it all goes to the court of protection, which is a nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
do.
so the vital thing is, do not make a loved
Because of that
one
reason.
for that.
Really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Okay. Thank you. Um, Wills.
Now I could go on
Mm.
for hours on wills.
Yeah, time
Um,
check. We're 24 minutes in. So
okay, fair enough. Um, I was always amused when I was a practicing solicitor, and typically clients would come and see me to make a will just before they were going to go on holiday. And you think, well, hang on a minute, you're no more likely to die on holiday than you are crossing the road in your
That's
local
me.
town.
That's me.
Um, and what people don't realise is if they don't make a will, what then? And
Mm,
it's if you don't make a will, you die what's called intestate. It's the Latin for without a will. And a whole load of rules kick in, really based on relationships. So, first of all, a spouse or civil partner, um, then children. And if you have both the spouse or civil partner surviving plus children, I'll come on to that. If you have none of them, then it goes to parents, then it goes to brothers and sisters. So broadly, it goes through your relatives. Interestingly, children include adopted children, they don't include stepchildren. And if you have no relatives surviving, it goes to the Crown. I think technically it goes to the Prince of Wales rather than the King.
that's right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's what I
but
believe.
anyway, you, you,
Yeah.
you hope it doesn't come to that. But let me give you a little example, because I was talking to a couple
Please.
a few months ago in their 30s with two young children, pretty well off, house in London. And they said to me, well, we don't need to make wills because if one of us goes, the other will get everything. I said, not a bit of it.
Mm,
Because in those circumstances, the surviving spouse will get personal chattels, that's your personal possessions, the statutory legacy of £322,000, and half of residue, half of what's left. And the
mm.
other half will go to the children. So you may find children getting several of thousands of pounds
Yeah.
after inheritance tax, if not more, at age 18. Completely the wrong thing to happen.
Yeah.
You can't vary the will in those circumstances because they don't have capacity to do that. And that couple, to whom I
Yeah.
was within 48 hours, they'd made a
Yeah.
will. So key thing, understand the intestacy rules. Rather like attorneys, who do you appoint as executors? Um, Again, somebody you trust. The important point to remember about executors is they have to act unanimously. And I have heard a number of awful situations where executors haven't agreed. Executors can be beneficiaries. They can be a solicitor. I always say, ideally, members of the family. I mean, my wife and I have appointed each other, subject to surviving for 28 days, failing whom the three children. And it's just important not only to make an appointment, well, first of all, to ask the person, because I've had letters from a solicitor saying Joe Bloggs has died and you're their executor.
Really? Oh,
You
sugar.
can renounce, you can what's called
Yeah.
renouncing probate, but you have to be very careful that you have not done what is so-called intermeddled in the estate, because as soon as you take some action consistent with being an executor, that makes you an executor. So you've got to be very, very careful. It's a very sensitive subject. So you appoint the people you want, you talk to them, you keep them updated. If they're not already beneficiaries, I always say that leave them a legacy, because it can be quite a tough job.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
depending on your means, leave them £5,000, whatever it is, leave them a painting, leave them something
Sure.
to
Yeah.
show your
Yeah.
appreciation.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
like
then
that.
at the other end of the will, whatever you own, it's called residue. I mentioned trusts. I'll come back to trusts. What a trust does, or a settlement, is separate the entitlement to income from the entitlement to capital, and they're legally owned by trustees. But the simplest gift of residue is everything divided, say, between my children, or everything going to my surviving spouse. And then in between that, you can make a whole lot of other gifts. You can give cash, you can give chattels to particular individuals or to charities. Charities are obviously free of inheritance tax. Normally, gifts of cash or chattels, you say, um, after inheritance tax. So inheritance tax is borne
Y- Yeah.
um, by residue. But the situation that's terribly important, and of course it happens not infrequently, is second marriages and stepchildren. because, of course, the disaster scenario is A marries B, B dies, or they have a divorce, they have children, A marries C in a simple case, and C survives A.
Yeah.
Um, yes, and suppose A leaves everything to C on the assumption that C will look after A's children.
Yeah.
Well, very often they won't, and C might marry somebody else.
Yeah.
And so it's terribly important to think of the position of children in the event that a marriage comes to an end by death or divorce. And typically this is where a trust comes in. So
Right.
you give
Yeah.
an entitlement
Yes.
to children. You might give income to the surviving spouse, but on the surviving spouse's death or before that, the capital goes to the children. That's I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
again, you have stories in the newspapers about
Yes.
children who effectively get disinherited, and that's a tragedy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once a will is proved, once probate is granted, and probate is the authority of the court to the executors to act,
Yeah.
then it's all out into the open.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's a
Yeah.
public document.
Yeah.
I think actually the wills of the royal family are possibly not public documents. But anyway, they're allowed that.
I
Um,
wonder how many children they've written out of their
well,
wills
no,
or
no comment. But
off with his head, off with his head.
the use of letters of wishes is very important, because letters of wishes,
Mm.
and you might write those to your if you give executors a discretion, maybe among charities or maybe among your children to exercise in a particular way, maybe depending on who the children marry or establish a relationship with. You might, because I always say fairness is not necessarily equality. You need to have these conversations with your children, but you can give discretions, and letters of wishes are not on the face of the will. Letters of wishes are discretionary, but in practice, you'd have to be quite brave not to follow them. But it's a huge subject, so make your will, get it right, review it every 3 to 5 years, and tell people about it. I remember when I was a practicing solicitor, I got into huge trouble because I had a client who was a Norfolk farmer, and I'm of course a Norfolk farmer, but Norfolk farmers are traditionally terribly secretive. And in fact, the Norfolk farmer had left everything to his wife, and but he didn't want her to know. And by mistake, my then secretary, and it was my fault, I don't blame her, but she sent a copy of the will to the wife. So she
Ooh.
did. And of course, it was a breach, it was a breach of
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was in the wrong. I put my, sorry, hands up. But I always say it's a good idea that people know what's coming. Again, you're not meant to have regrets in life, but one of my big regrets is that I never did a reading of the will. You've got the solicitor at the end of the dining room table, Victorian times.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
got a
How the movies. Yeah. That's
morning
right.
coach, and nobody knows what's in the will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was a he in those days, he or she would read it. And you get round the table, the whole mix of human emotions. You get
Yeah.
greed, you
Yeah.
get envy, you get delight, you get surprise. I never did that. So important that there are no surprises. Everybody knows.
Yeah, I like that. That's my conversations with clients as well. And yeah, good. Couple of just if it's okay. This is another area where there's a couple of questions. The first one is, what is probate?
Well, I mentioned that it's really the authority of the court to the executors. The important point to remember is until you get probate, everything is frozen. Bank accounts are frozen.
Okay.
Which is
wow.
going to emphasize a point I'll come on to. You've got to ensure that the surviving partner has enough to live on.
Yeah.
Because probate can take up to a year or even more. Ideally, it takes a few months. But you've got to get the inheritance tax sorted. So you've got to know where all the assets are, get them valued, liabilities, and all that sort of thing. So that's what probate is. It enables the executors to act as such.
To act, right? Okay, yeah. And last question, actually, because you've covered everything else off just by naturally chatting through things. And that's whether a will can be changed after.
Yeah. Oh, yes. It can be changed for inheritance tax purposes. So, for example, supposing Alice is left some money, she could vary the will to give, say, £10,000 to charity. And that, providing you go through the formalities within 2 years under the Inheritance Tax Act, then she's effectively saving £4,000 in inheritance tax. But the other interesting thing is that it only operates for inheritance tax. So for income tax purposes, Alice can get gift aid. So if Alice is a higher rate taxpayer, A, the
Okay.
charity gets the 20% back, but B,
Yeah.
Alice gets an income tax saving.
Okay.
And the other instance in which varying a will can be useful is in terms of generation skipping. So
Yes.
you might
Yeah.
make a will, you might leave property to your children. The children say, well, I'm well off, I don't need it. I will actually vary the will to leave it to my children. So in effect, you're only paying inheritance tax once.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
getting the assets down to the grandchildren, and that can be quite useful. And 2 years, well, it sounds a long, it is quite a long time as long as you get on with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
always think about that possibility.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I think we're moving on now to funeral arrangements.
Yeah. So this is the third one, really.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you want? And in my experience as a ordained minister of taking funerals, the big question the children ask, say, is what would mum, what would dad have wanted? So very important to make it clear. I put in my last bullet point, expression of wishes rather than requirements. In other words, it's your wishes. You can refer to it in your will. Typically, you will say in your will, I wish my body to be cremated or buried at a particular place.
Yeah.
And I'm leaving a letter of wishes. But you don't put all the detailed stuff in the will. You put that in the letter, but it's not requirements. So in other words, things may change. Something might have become impossible, for example. And so you leave it to your children to decide what to do according to the circumstances at the time. The other thing I should have said on wills, of course, supposing you leave a legacy to Alice, and then Alice has died by the time you die, then the legacy simply fails unless you put in your will, but if Alice doesn't survive me, then to her children in equal.
Okay. So
Right.
yes, you need another step.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you decide you want to be cremated, you want to be buried. I've got a cartoon in the book where you've got the coffin going down into the ground, flames coming from the coffin, and the caption is, they didn't specify which, so we wanted to cover both bases. But normally you'll make it clear. The other thing increasingly that's happening now, which I mentioned in the book, which you'll be aware of, is direct cremations, which save a lot of money. I personally think direct cremations are terribly sad because, of course, you don't, I mean, whether it's a religious service or a civil ceremony or whatever, you don't have the family there. But people are increasingly cost conscious. So you say what you want, where, you say who would be involved. For example, if it's a Church of England service, whether it's in church, whether it's a crematorium, if it's a cremation, what form the service takes, who you want to speak, who you want to read, all that sort of thing. You may want a memorial service, particularly if you're very famous, like you, Pete, or
live streamed around the world.
Indeed. Actually, that's a very important point, is that wherever you do it, you need to make arrangements for live streaming so people can watch it wherever you are. And then you have a party afterwards. And the great news about the party afterwards is the cost is deductible for inheritance tax purposes, HMRC are very generous. And in fact, I had one rather well-heeled US, UK client who had huge parties, both sides of the
Oh,
pond.
really?
So that was very tax efficient.
Yeah, yeah. Brilliant.
So be as detailed as you want, leave discretions to your family, but just and just keep it up to date. But
Yeah,
these things are
yeah.
important.
For me, there was a time where even having the songs written down or the
Yes,
hymns that
exactly,
people want,
exactly.
because again, that's a challenge for the children. Going back to me and my sister and my mum. Geez, what song would my mum want or
Yeah,
hymn to be sung? And
yeah, yeah.
it's very difficult. So having that decision being
You,
already
you
made
know,
for us, it
and the
is
music at the beginning, the music at the end,
yeah,
all that sort of
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where do people write this, Matthew? Is
Yes.
it with like a letter of wishes? Is it? Is it
Yes.
something additional? Like, what's your thoughts
Yes.
around
They
that?
write it. Ideally, it's typed. Ideally, it's a very good question. It's left with the will, and
Yeah.
you keep on
Okay.
updating. And the great thing about a letter of wishes, you don't have to pay a solicitor.
Yeah.
You can update a will out of interest with a codicil. So you may say, I want to change this particular bequest. That's just a little change. It doesn't cost so much. I mean, wills
Okay.
don't cost the earth.
No. No.
Um,
No.
but obviously, if you've got detailed tax planning going on, then it will be
Mm,
expensive. But ideally, you leave the codicil, you leave the letter of wishes with your will. You tell everybody where these things are, so they know where to go.
yeah. Yeah. And did you ever come across people prepaying for their funeral arrangements? I don't know if you've got any experience
Yes,
of that, because that seems to be
it's
something.
it's interesting because I'm also, you won't be surprised to hear, as well as making myself my book known among financial advisors, I'm also doing it with funeral directors.
Okay. Yeah.
There was a
Okay.
conference last week in Bury St Edmunds in Suffolk, and
Yeah.
I had a chance to speak. And what's quite interesting is it does seem that about almost as many as a quarter of people appoint a funeral director while they're alive, which is a huge percentage. Some people say it's
Yeah.
less than that, but um, the advantage of that is you establish a relationship, they get to know you. Typically, that'll be a connection with a prepaid plan. The advantage, I mean, prepaid plans have pros and cons. The pros is that it's a guard against inflation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically,
I hear that.
you say, whatever the cost is, I'm putting it down now. The funeral director will pop it on deposit or whatever to protect themselves. The downside is that you're typically tying yourself to a particular funeral director. And so if you live in
Yeah.
Sussex and then by the time you die, you're in Yorkshire, um,
Yeah.
un-
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
unless it's a chain of directors.
Yeah.
So you need to think a bit about that.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Good.
do
Good
you
points.
ask yourself, yes. So if you haven't got a funeral plan, just ask yourself the question, well, where's the cost going to come from? Am I going to die with enough money in the bank to pay for that?
Yeah.
And so on.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. Okay. Moving on. Ready? You okay?
Yeah, fine. Dependence. I mean, again,
Mm.
I don't wish to
Mm.
be gloomy. I
It's
do
hard
say,
not to be, though, isn't it? But it's
well,
important that we talk about it. It's important that we talk
yeah,
about it. Remember?
I
Yeah.
do say in the book, it's actually not a book about death. If I'm feeling naughty and I say I've written a book and somebody says what it's about, if I'm feeling naughty, I say it's about death. But no, actually, it's a book about life.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm really stressing the importance of your legacy, not in terms of pounds, shillings, and pence. See how old I am, um, that you leave behind, but legacy in terms of the person that you are. And of course, you could go at any time. And there may be people you look at, you may have minor children, um, you may have elderly relatives you look after,
Yeah.
granny in the flat next door.
Yeah. Yeah.
You may have pets. Well, if you go, I mean, ideally, then there's a partner who survives you. But
Mm.
if not, what are the arrangements? Now, with minor children, typically what you will do is appoint what's called testamentary guardians, and that is formal. You appoint them in the will. Again, you've talked to them. You've written down your wishes. I mean, ultimately, you're handing them over to your friends. But
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
like you may be religious, they not, or vice versa.
Mm, mm.
Um, you might want to opt for private education. How anybody can afford it, I don't know,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
not. How, sports, pastimes,
yeah, yeah,
chess, everybody seems. No, I don't mean as detailed as that, but just you need to have a conversation with your guardians and
yeah,
say, look, and
yeah.
get to know the children. Maybe they know them terribly well.
Mm.
My parents appointed David and Lois Gould, who live 5 miles down the road from us, and
Right,
we will,
okay.
we knew each other terribly well.
Yeah.
And ideally, they get to know the children. Um, but you do not want your last thought. Um, sort of, I quote Spike
Keep it
Milligan.
clean, keep it clean.
Spike Milligan's last words was, "I told them I was ill."
I love that. I
Or,
know. That's what his
or there was
gravestone,
another
isn't it?
one. I think Oscar Wilde. Either the wallpaper goes or I do. Um, but you don't want your last thought to be, "Oh, bother, I haven't
Yes.
appointed guardian." So
Yeah, I know.
then
And what happens if you don't, Matthew? So sorry, I know that might be going down. I don't know if you want to just, we
well,
touched on
then
if you haven't got a will, obviously there's a legal route, and
well
I take it
then
there's a
then there's
legal
sort
route
of
with minor
next of kin
children.
and family,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
you'll
Geez.
have to sort
Wow.
of go to court.
Yeah.
It's a huge process.
Mess. Horrible.
It's
Yeah.
a
Okay.
mess. It's a mess.
Okay.
So just think about it. Don't lose sleep over it, and then pass on to the next slide. There you are.
Another
That's
quote.
one of my
Another quote.
quotations. Everyone lives forever. So
Yeah.
far, so good. Okay, next one. So the death certificate. The death certificate is basically confirmation of registration of a death in the UK. In one sense, life begins with it doesn't begin with a birth certificate. It begins with
But yeah. Yeah. No. No.
look,
Yeah.
it's a boy, it's a girl. Um, but it ends with a death certificate in a formal sense. And things changed quite significantly in September 2024 with a new procedure, what's called the medical certificate of cause of death, which needs 2 signatures, the first of whom is going to be the attending medical practitioner, could be the doctor in the hospital, could be your GP if death occurs at home. And then the second signature, which confirms that, is the relevant medical examiner. And interestingly, quite a lot of where death is unexplained or sudden, it will go to the coroner. And a surprisingly high proportion do go to the coroner, but mostly they don't. And mostly what will happen is that you will get from the medical examiner by email a copy of the medical certificate of cause of death. That will be sent to the General Register Office, which is appropriate to your particular postcode.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
in my
Yeah.
case, it'll be somewhere in Norwich.
Yeah.
And once you've got it as the person who applies for it, typically a member of the family, you've got to get your skates on, because in England and Wales, you've got to make an application to see the General Register Office within 5 days. In Scotland,
Okay.
it's 8.
Right.
So,
Okay. Okay. That's important to know.
and
Yeah.
there's a whole host. I'm not going to go through them now. We haven't got time. It'll bore the
Yeah.
pants off me. But there's lots of detail and documents that have to be produced to the General Register Office. So that's why, as part of getting your affairs in order, it's actually writing down, telling people where they are. And
Okay.
so
Okay.
when the
Yeah.
time comes, you're not scrabbling about looking.
Sure. Sure.
So digital
Mm.
assets.
Mm.
So Pete, are you good on passwords? You probably are, actually. Probably.
I am. Yeah. Well, you're obviously in the industry that I'm on. Every password we use to log into anything is different. It's
Yeah,
got to be a
I know.
very
And
strong password.
I've
So it's
got
just
one
getting
friend
incredibly
who's
hard.
absolutely manic, who thinks that whether it's the Russians or anybody else. They're after all his
Yeah,
passwords.
his information.
I'm sort of somewhere in between, so I do
Yeah,
have,
I mean, technology helps. I've got to admit,
of
Apple's
course,
very good with
yeah,
their passwords, and Google Chrome's
mm,
good. But yeah, I mean, gone are the days where it used to be a book with all the same password for everything.
I know.
So yeah,
I know.
things are
Yes,
changing.
and when you fill in a new password, you get judged, don't you, on whether it's strong, medium,
Yes,
or weak.
yeah,
Um, but you can imagine. I mean, laptop, phone, whatever, and then a whole range of other social media
yeah, yeah,
facilities. That if those your nearest and dearest do not have access to those, um, it's just horrendous. So, you
yeah.
know, you can appoint a password manager. Facebook and so on allow you to appoint a
They do.
legacy contact.
And also, Apple does as well. And I don't know about Samsung and other phone manufacturers, but they've got a legacy contact as well. That has moved on, I think, over the last couple of years. So, really important for people to be aware of, without a doubt, because this is where our life potentially is, isn't it? A lot
Yes.
of our lives are.
Yeah.
I'm glad
So
you brought
it's
this up, actually.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's sort of stating the bleeding obvious. But
Yeah.
if you imagine, I mean, quite a good way to think about this, and I don't wish to sound sort of ghoulish, but supposing you've just died, um, and you're sort of out
Mm.
there, looking down,
Yeah.
and you put yourself in the position of your family,
Yeah.
and you just think, well, what have they got to do? What have they got to confront?
Yeah.
How can I make life easier for them?
Yeah.
And then get cracking. And one of the points I make in the book is yes, it is it's 120 pages, no more. It's quite quick. I'm very amused to think if you're reading it on holiday, I think I'll
Yeah.
have gone for Dick Francis or somebody else. But anyway,
Yeah.
but you don't have to do it all at once.
No.
If you've got another half, it's quite fun to do it together. And it's not an exam. It is, I mean, the checklists do have boxes that you can tick. Yes, done that. There's
Yeah,
a
they do.
critical checklist and a comprehensive checklist.
Yes, I like that.
But just, sort of get on with it and set yourself, I don't know, a couple of months to do it.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
But digital assets are absolutely key.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. I tend to find this either that one of the husband and wife later on in life, there's normally one that's got a laptop and they don't know the password again to their laptop, and that holds every bit of information on a
Yeah.
spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. Giving someone some access there, or an ability to understand what to do next, is really, really important. Good.
So moving on,
Yeah.
financial, again, I've referred to this first one, particularly if
Yes.
either the breadwinner or the person who's richer is the first to go. If you have to wait for up to 12 months, you know, um,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
is the survivor going to manage, pay the bills? And the time-honored solution here is joint bank or building society accounts.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. I
and then
agree.
all you produce the death certificate. The only word of warning here, actually, I came across recently, is if one of you becomes mentally incapable, you then have to go to the bank and decide what to do. I mean, this is again where powers of attorney
Mm.
come,
Yes.
because then
Yeah.
your attorney can then step in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's the time-honored thing.
Really important.
Inheritance tax is my
Mm.
very favorite subject. I should have said, actually, none of this is advice.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
used to
No.
advise. I
No.
don't. These are suggestions.
Yeah.
Um, you can mitigate. There are three things you can do with inheritance tax. One is mitigate, which is legal. You use exemptions and reliefs. One is evasion, which is utterly illegal and will end you behind bars. And one is avoidance, which is a sort of grey area,
Mm.
and you might go to the court. I think avoidance is quite fun, but anyway, probably not to be indulged in by the faint-hearted. So mitigation, lifetime gifts, that's good. And just make some estimate particularly on the second death. Record gifts made in the last 7 years, very important too, because they get taken into account. And whatever the amount is, where's the money going to come from?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Very
strictly
important.
speaking, inheritance tax has to be paid. If you die today, it has to be paid 6 months after the 31st of July. It has to be paid 31 January next year.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and once you don't pay it, interest starts running.
Mm.
So think about inheritance tax, think about pensions. Pensions are a minefield. As everybody knows, as of 6 April 2027, pension funds come into charge to inheritance tax.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's just prompting it, and you'll be talking to your clients about that.
Constantly so
Yeah.
on our agenda. I mean, again, I don't know how
It's a
long this
huge.
this is going to be available. So people could be watching this in 3-4 years
Yeah.
down the line, and
Yeah.
this is historic. But that's the majority of my time is talking about the mitigation of inheritance tax, the options that we've got, and it is one of the easiest taxes to mitigate because there's so many things that we can do. But it's about making sure that we don't put our own financial lives and lifestyle at risk.
I always say don't give away too much too early.
Yeah.
And old age has a habit of being expensive, care home fees and all that sort of thing. And the other thing,
I really like your point. Sorry, I really like your point
Yeah.
about the provision of payment, understanding of where that's money going to, how is the bill going to be paid and how is it going to be funded? Because especially if people have got large estates and houses, how long is it going to take to liquidate? Who's going to receive that? And actually, if it was a situation where son and daughter, son's going to inherit the property, daughter's going to inherit the liquid assets, and then the liquid assets are used to fund the inheritance tax bill, and then daughter's got less than. So it's important just to have that picture in someone's mind, really, and even more difficult.
The other thing I was going to say, this is the 10th of July, 2026.
Yeah.
Soon we will have a new Prime Minister. We will have a new Chancellor of the Exchequer. We're in a mess financially as a country.
Yeah.
He's got to get the money from somewhere.
Yeah.
So, all this is subject to what might happen politically.
Yeah, it's always on the agenda, and it's moved a lot, hasn't it, in the last couple of years?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for that. Really good to touch on.
So responsibilities, yes.
Yeah, this is good. Okay, something I hadn't thought about.
Well,
businesses.
you may be.
I have about businesses because we've got a plan. Yeah,
you are a business person.
Yeah.
You may be in a partnership. You may be a shareholder and.
We're a limited company, and we've actually got a flow chart. What should happen if I'm no longer around for whatever reason?
You may be a trustee of a charitable trust. You might be a treasurer of the gardening or the fishing club or whatever it is. Again, what happens if you get run over by a bus tomorrow? So you need to think about who's going to take on your responsibilities. Obviously, with stuff that you own, businesses. Sadly, business property relief and agricultural property relief have been chipped away at. So think about that. And just succession. We come back to those conversations. Talk to the people who are going to take your place. Where's the stuff that they need to know, to find, so that the succession can be as seamless as possible. And then it can be.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, good. Okay, next one.
Again, think of all the things you own. I mean, a lot of them will be personal possessions.
Yeah.
There'll be furniture. Where are the keys to the safe? Where's the stopcock?
Yeah.
Again, there's one of the forms in the book deals with this, but just... And you may have people who help around the home. You may have somebody a gardener or somebody who cleans. And of course, insurance is terribly important because I suspect that thieves read the death pages in the local newspaper.
Oh, yeah, that's a good.
So, what happens if the property becomes empty? Think about security. Alarms and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and how long the policy allows that home to be
exactly
unencumbered. Yeah, good.
So I think that probably takes us to our final slide. It just describes the book. I've mentioned those 2 checklists, the 5 downloadable spreadsheets. The updates tab on the website. So if you have, I know you have the second edition, somebody might have bought the first. I've got update tabs, which you can find out, what's happened since. So you don't feel you have to go out and buy the next edition. And talking of
Sure.
which, I am currently working on a third edition, which will be published sometime over the autumn.
Yeah.
And I have done an audio book of the second edition. I'll do an audio book
Have you? Oh, okay. That's
of the
good.
third.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
gather people quite like audiobooks.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I listen to it in the car as I'm traveling around everywhere and anywhere. I'm listening to a couple of Sharp books at the moment. So yeah. Yeah. Where's the best place? Where would you, for people to get copies? I mean, obviously we've still got remaining. We bought a bulk a year or two ago, which we've been giving out. So for any of our clients that are watching this, if you do want a copy until they run out, come to us. But is it best to go on your website, Matthew,
yeah,
because of
there
the
are.
updates and
It
also, I mean, for me, I would suggest looking at the ring binder as well. I know
Yes.
I've got many clients and friends that I've bought it for. I'm an executor for a friend of mine, kind of giving it to them to complete. So yeah, what's the kind of best
Well, it
practice
is
from your point of view?
it is stocked by some bookshops, or you can get it through some bookshops, which are listed on the website. Um, you can. The easiest way probably is simply to buy it um, through the website. It will then get sent to you by Amazon. Um, there is also the digital version,
Mm.
which again you buy direct from the website, and then you get access immediately.
Great.
And then in either case, you will get sent a link to the checklists and spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So it
Brilliant.
depends what's most
Yeah,
convenient.
yeah, well, yeah. Whatever's right for whoever wants to purchase. That's
Yeah,
brilliant. Okay, so really nice and easy. Really nice and
yeah,
easy.
hope so.
120 pages, cartoons and quotations, but there's definitely that checklist at the back. It's fantastic, just to kind of keep yourself in order, really, isn't it? So go to the website. Anybody watching this, go to the website.
Yeah, and the website will give you a whole lot of other information. There'll be reviews, and yeah, it'll tell you about the book.
Yeah, brilliant, great. Matthew, that's time. Time, would you believe it? That's the fastest hour I've had for ages. Thank you so much. I mean, I haven't got any more questions. I don't know if you feel that we've covered everything off that you wanted
Yeah,
to.
I think so.
Yeah, good. That just leaves me really to say thank you so much. It's 2 years in the making, getting an opportunity. I mean, wow. I mean, I've seen you on stages at the Advisor 3.0 stage a year ago now, I think it was. So, yeah, to actually have you in person or kind of 2D in front of me is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So thank you ever so much for
Well,
being really
it's
accommodating.
been great fun,
Yeah,
Pete. Very good to get to know you, and thank you for your questions.
it's lovely. Thank you very much.